Do you ever get that feeling like you're being watched? Like the air's thick with something you can't put your finger on? That's how it was for me from the second I stepped foot on this island. "Hey, this is the spot," shouted Captain Marty, his voice blending with the cry of the seagulls and the crash of the waves. "You sure you want to be left here?" "Absolutely," I answered, trying to sound braver than I felt. It was supposed to be a quiet getaway, you know? Away from the hustle of the city, just me, the ocean, and my thoughts, or at least that's what the ad said. Rediscover yourself on Solitude Island. Yeah, right. After the boat faded into the horizon, I hiked up to the cabin I'd rented. It was old, sure, but quaint with its dusty windows and creaking wood floors. The first thing I did was unpack my stuff and make myself a sandwich. Turkey and cheese, nothing fancy. I figured I'd go for a walk afterward. About a half-mile from the cabin, I stumbled upon this creepy statue. It was of a woman, arms outstretched like she was either welcoming me or warning me. Her face was half eroded, so you couldn't really tell what she was feeling. I snapped a pic on my phone and carried on. By the time the sun started setting, I was back in the cabin, chilling and reading a book. That's when I heard it. A soft thud from outside. I strained my ears, listening. Silence. Maybe it was just a fallen branch or something, but then it happened again. Thud, this time closer. I grabbed the flashlight and opened the door, half expecting to see a raccoon messing with the garbage or something. Nothing. Just darkness and the distant sound of the ocean. Feeling a bit creeped out, I locked the door behind me and decided to call it a night. I snuggled into the old bed with its musty smell and tried to shake off the weird vibes. Just as I was drifting off, I heard it, a soft scratching sound from the corner of the room. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. I flicked on the light. Nothing was there. Just me being paranoid, I told myself. Still, I didn't sleep well that night, jumping at every creak in the floorboards or rustle of wind outside. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. I had some cereal, took a shower, and decided to explore the other side of the island. Maybe find a spot to swim. That would lighten the mood, right? So, I walked, and eventually, I found this nice little beach. The sand was warm, and the waves were inviting. Just as I was about to take a dip, I saw something sticking out of the sand, a piece of cloth it looked like. Curiosity got the better of me. I started digging, and that's when I found it. A bag, half buried. My stomach twisted with a weird mix of excitement and dread as I opened it up. Inside were clothes, a wallet, and a phone, dead as a doornail. It hit me then. Someone else had been here, and from the looks of it, they hadn't planned on leaving these things behind. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I looked around the beach, half expecting to see someone lurking in the trees. I was alone, or at least I felt like I should be. Freaked out, I headed back to the cabin, the bag in tow. Maybe it belonged to someone who stayed here before me. The thought was a bit comforting, but not much. I spent the rest of the day in the cabin, flipping through the channels on an old TV and trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. When night fell, I double-checked the locks and curled up in bed, keeping my flashlight close. That's when the whispers started. Faint at first, but getting louder. Like someone was right outside the window, their voice a mumbled secret. My skin crawled. I was too scared to look, too scared to move. Then, just as suddenly, the whispers stopped. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the first rays of light broke through the curtains, I grabbed my stuff and bolted out the door. I was going to get to the beach and wave down the first boat I saw, ad or no ad. Halfway down the trail, I tripped on something and went sprawling. When I looked back to see what it was, my breath caught in my throat. It was the statue from before, lying on its side, its arms no longer outstretched but pointing in the direction I was heading, as if urging me to go, to run. Not needing any more encouragement, I picked myself up and raced down the trail. When I broke through the tree line and saw the open ocean, I almost cried from relief. I waited there, my eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of a boat. Minutes turned into hours. Finally, just when I thought I couldn't take anymore, I saw it, a tiny dot in the distance growing larger. It was the boat coming back for me. As I stepped onto the deck, Captain Marty looked at me with concern. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, too drained to say much. As the island receded in the distance, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. There, standing at the edge of the shore, was the statue. Only now, its arms were down at its sides, and I swear it looked like it was waving goodbye. That's when I knew. I was leaving Solitude Island, but a piece of it would always stay with me, hidden, haunting, and whispering secrets I never wanted to hear.
I can't believe I took this job. A lighthouse keeper on some godforsaken island miles away from civilization? It'll be peaceful, they said. You need the quiet, they said. But let me tell you, there's a difference between quiet and this eerie silence that hangs over the place like a wet blanket. It was a foggy afternoon when I first arrived. The old boatman who brought me here wouldn't even look me in the eye. "Don't go wandering at night," was all he said before he puttered away, leaving me standing next to a dilapidated lighthouse and a tiny shack I was supposed to call home. I shrugged it off. Old folks and their superstitions, right? The first week went smooth. My routine was simple. Wake up, check the machinery, clean the lenses, and make sure the light shone bright for any stray ships. By the evening, I'd sit with a book or listen to music on a battery-operated radio. But then weird things started happening. The first sign was the creaking door. I was sure I locked the lighthouse before climbing into bed, but at around midnight, I heard it. Creak. The sound echoed, sending chills down my spine. I grabbed a flashlight and tiptoed down the spiral staircase. When I got there, the door was wide open. Must be the wind, I convinced myself, even though there wasn't even a breeze that night. A couple of nights later, I was up in the tower, and I saw something in the fog. A silhouette of a man standing on the shore, staring right at the lighthouse. When I blinked, he was gone. Was I seeing things? Probably. This place can mess with your head. I shook it off. Until one evening, the radio started acting up. I was tuning in to catch the baseball scores, but all I heard was static and then laughter. The kind of laughter that makes your skin crawl. I switched it off, reminding myself it was just an old radio, but the silence that followed was even worse. Days turned into weeks, and the isolation started getting to me. I took to walking along the shore to clear my head. That's when I found them. Dozens of tiny trinkets, little symbols and charms made of twine and bone scattered along the shoreline. Now I ain't an expert, but they looked a whole lot like those voodoo things you see in movies. I had enough. It was time to leave. But how? The boatman would only come next month. And that's when I started hearing it. The footsteps. They always came after midnight. A slow, rhythmic sound climbing up the staircase. Thump, thump, thump. I held my breath each time, praying they would stop. They always did, just outside the door. And then, a soft knock. Enough was enough. This had to stop. On the night I decided I'd confront whatever was out there, the footsteps returned. Closer, closer. The knock. But this time, I swung the door open, flashlight in hand. There was no one there, just the howling wind and the vast, dark sea. I couldn't sleep anymore. Night after night, the footsteps returned. The knock, the dread. It was a cycle, and it was breaking me. Until one night when I finally cracked. I heard the footsteps, and when the knock came, I yelled, "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then, from the darkness below, a voice answered, "To warn you." It was a guttural whisper tinged with sorrow more than menace. Warn me? Warn me about what? About him. Before I could ask who him was, the lighthouse went dark. Complete darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, my heart pounding in my chest. When the beam cut through the dark, I almost wished it hadn't. There, at the bottom of the staircase, stood the boatman, his eyes devoid of life, his face twisted in a malevolent grin, and in his hand, a gleaming knife. I slammed the door shut and bolted it, my entire body shaking. But then, the light came back on. I looked out of the window hoping he was gone. He was, but what I saw on the shore made my blood freeze. There, standing by the water, were dozens of silhouettes looking up at me as if waiting. That was a month ago. The boatman hasn't returned, and neither has anyone else. I'm stuck here, with whatever haunts this place. The footsteps still come, the knock still follows, and the figures still watch from the shore. The lighthouse is no longer a sanctuary, it's a trap, and all I can do is keep the light burning, praying for a ship that never comes, on an island that won't let me go.
I never thought I'd be stuck on Paradise Island of all places, scared out of my mind. The island had one of those names that made you think of umbrella drinks, white sand beaches, and never wanting to leave. Well, I wanted to leave. Badly. I had come for a weekend getaway. The place was nearly empty, a bit off-season, but cheaper rates, you know. The resort was nice enough, but everything went sideways real quick. First, there was the storm. Big, angry, and out of nowhere. No boats in or out for days, they said. Then there were the noises, not like the ocean waves or the tropical birds, but weird thumps and rustling from the woods. I told myself it was just animals, except it didn't sound like any animal I knew. The sounds got worse each night. Finally, I had enough. I figured I'd take a hike, maybe get some pictures of the exotic animals making all that racket. A little adventure might make the whole trip worthwhile. The trail started out easy enough. Tall trees gave me plenty of shade, and the air smelled like fresh rain. But it didn't take long before the path got darker, and the woods closed in like they were keeping a secret. That's when I heard it. A low growl somewhere off in the bushes. I froze. Maybe it was a wild boar or some local predator. I wasn't keen on meeting either. I started backing away real slow, but the growl followed me. And then it got louder. Soon, I heard footsteps. Not the four-legged kind, but heavy, dragging footsteps like someone, or something, was pulling its feet. My heart was pounding as I turned and ran. Every snap of a twig shot adrenaline through me like a bolt of lightning. But the footsteps kept pace. I didn't dare look back. Finally, I burst out of the trees and into a clearing. In the center stood an old shack, worn down by time and weather. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, I caught my breath. Maybe it was stupid, but the shack felt like the lesser of two evils. I ran inside and bolted the rickety door behind me. It was dark, with just a sliver of light coming through the cracks in the wood. I tried to steady my breathing, to listen, silence, nothing but the wind outside. Minutes felt like hours. Had I lost it? Maybe whatever it was had given up, moved on. I was about to unlock the door when I heard a creak above me. I looked up. The ceiling was sagging under a weight, the old boards groaning like they were about to give. And then I heard that growl again, but this time it was coming from above me, from inside the shack. I didn't even bother with the door. I smashed through a weak spot in the wall and sprinted as fast as my legs would carry me, all the way back to the resort. I didn't stop until I was locked in my room. Every light on, and every piece of furniture I could move was jammed against the door. The next morning the weather cleared up, and the first boat off the island couldn't come soon enough. As we pulled away, I looked back at the shoreline, at the edge of the woods, and I swear I saw something move, something big slipping back into the dark trees. I don't know what's out there, and I don't ever want to find out, but one thing's for sure, Paradise Island is one place I'll never set foot on again, because some places, no matter how beautiful, are better left alone.